Technical limitations happen all the time. The real test is how you deal with them. Like, for example, how I'm continuing to do this intro even though I can't figure out how to turn this filter off. Turns out, however, that instead of cursing technical limitations, we should be thanking them, as they lead to creative thinking, workarounds, and unexpected surprises that created some of the most iconic moments, characters, and even genres in video game history. Here are 7 times technical limitations accidentally made great games. Oh, and don't worry, I think I've got this figured out. Nope! Worse!
Finally returning to prominence thanks to his playable turn in recent Super Smash Bros. Games, Little Mac from the Punch-Out series of boxing games is the ultimate underdog, a 17-year-old 4'8", 107-pound boxer going toe-to-toe with literally Mike Tyson. Despite his diminutive stature, Mac is an inspirational figure showing players that they can overcome any obstacle through perseverance, self-belief, and if those fail, moves he learned watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. What folks might not realise is that Little Mac's size wasn't originally a conscious choice by the developers, but rather the solution to a technical problem they had in converting the original Punch-Out arcade game into something that could be played on the NES. In the original Punch-Out, you played as a green-haired, unnamed boxer who was no different in size to the opponents he faced. In this version of the game, the boxer's body and limbs were see-through wireframes, allowing players to see their opponent's full body. Without this design choice, parts of your opponent would be obscured, which would make it much harder for you to predict their moves.
Body throw! Body throw! Put him away! You got him! Right foot! Right foot! Right foot! Down!
Might be harder for your opponent to predict your moves if you stopped shouting them out loud, my guy. When the game moved to the far less powerful NES, however, it became clear that the transparent wireframe seen in the arcade game was way beyond the 8-bit console's capabilities, and so there needed to be another way to have the player be able to see their opponent. The solution? Make the main character 4'8", which not only solves the technical problem, but also turns them into one of the greatest underdog protagonists of all time, as they square off against Iron Mike in the game's hard-won final encounter. Honestly, I don't know what else I was expecting.
Silent Hill is remembered as a classic of the survival horror genre, mostly thanks to its incredible claustrophobic atmosphere. Well, it wasn't going to be the voice acting.
Wait a second, I'm just a tourist. I came here for a vacation.
A big part of the game's weird, eerie, oppressive feel is thanks to the thick fog that blankets the town. You can never see more than a handful of feet in front of you, and the sinister promise of what might be lurking unseen in the swirling mist is a much more powerful fear generator than being rushed by skinless zombie dogs. Although that does happen too. Also, while you can't see into the fog, you can definitely hear what's going on in there, thanks to your radio. No thank you! While it might seem like this fog was the perfect way to convey the claustrophobic horror of Silent Hill, it actually serves as a way of disguising the technical limitations of the original PlayStation. Those technical limitations meant that the developers weren't able to continuously render game worlds around you, as seen here in the PlayStation game Nightmare Creatures, where it looks as if someone is running ahead of your character, frantically turning on lights as you approach. Instead of going with the phantom lighting assistant, Silent Hill instead chose to shroud everything in what is now the series' most famous feature, fog, so you could only see things as you got close to them. Which, I remind you, is close enough for them to stab you in the face with a kitchen knife. More like Violent Hill, am I right? Oh, I'm dead.
Hello, and again, welcome to the Aperture Science Computer Aided Enrichment Center. We hope your brief detention in the relaxation vault has been a pleasant one. Your specimen has been processed, and we are now ready to begin the test proper.
Hilarious, mind-bending first-person puzzle game Portal has plenty to recommend it, not least the bit where you're forced to incinerate your best friend, who is a cube. What? He had it coming.
You euthanized your faithful companion cube more quickly than any test subject on record. Congratulations.
But one of the most interesting things about the story of Portal and its sequel, Portal 2, is that it's set in the same universe as Half-Life, with the crossovers between the two series providing some of the most intriguing lore in video games.
Maybe Black Mesa. That was a joke. Haha, that chance.
What might surprise you, however, is that this crossover is entirely due to technical limitations, namely the fact that the small development team behind Portal didn't have the time or resources to create a whole bunch of new art assets for their game. The original prototype that Portal's development team had created using the Portal mechanic was called Narbacular Drop and was set in a fantasy world where a princess had to use magic gateways to escape from a demon's mountain fortress. The nerds. Which you'll notice doesn't sound like anything you'll see in any pre-existing Valve game. This would mean that anything along these same lines would need the creation of new art that the team simply didn't have the resources to make. As a result, Portal's development team ended up reusing a lot of art assets from Half-Life 2, and rather than trying to hide the fact, Valve embraced it, creating a canonical link between the two series that would explain why they looked so similar. And with the references getting more explicit in Portal 2, we'll finally find out the full extent of the crossover when Valve releases Portal 3. Oh right, there isn't a Portal 3. That's cool, I'm sure Half-Life 3 will be out soon, then we'll get some answers.
In the original Resident Evil, the creaking, dilapidated mansion in which most of the game is set is as much a character as any of the humans running around in it. It's certainly less wooden, despite a lot of it being made of actual wood.
I'm sorry, Jill.
I didn't know that was going to happen.
Part of the reason for this is the game's famous pre-rendered backgrounds, which still look pretty good even today, but that are actually the result of technical limitations on the original PlayStation. Rather than create complicated and processor-hungry 3D environments for your chosen STARS member to wander through, Capcom instead chose to have those 3D characters make their way through pre-rendered backgrounds, which not only looked better, but thanks to their fixed camera angles, actually contributed to a lot of the sense of horror and dread felt in the game as well. Especially when you can hear enemies, but not see them. And the only way to see them is to get much closer to them than you are now. Or just call this the end of the game. That works too. Roll credits. Thanks. Another iconic aspect of the early Resident Evil games is the door opening scenes, in which your intrepid zombie fighter spends a good 10 seconds opening and passing through a door. Which not only helps the game's spooky atmosphere, building tension as you slowly move forward into the unknown, but also disguises the fact that the game is frantically loading the next room while you descend the stairs with all the speedy quickness of a sedated banana slug. Would it be fair to say that everything that makes the original Resident Evil scary was a result of its technical limitations? No, but consider this. Would you be half as scared of zombies if the game had a working control system that let you actually avoid them with any kind of predictable regularity? Exactly.
When arcade game Space Invaders was first released in 1978, it proved so popular that a widely believed urban legend claims it actually caused a shortage of 100 yen coins in Japan because the country's entire stock was lying inside Space Invader cabinets. There are various reasons for the game's popularity, from its amazing graphics to the incredible soundtrack. Look, it was the 70s, it was this or read a book. One of the things that kept people coming back to Space Invaders, however, was its difficulty curve. When you start a game, the invading force of blocky aliens moves at a fairly sedate pace. But while the alien horde initially seems pretty tame, the more of them you kill, the faster they start to move, until you're left with the final Space Invader who, spurred on by the death of all his friends, flies into a grief-induced murderous rage. Pretty sure that's what's going on here. It seems natural to us futuristic 21st centurians used to games like Dark Souls, seen here, that games should get harder the longer you play them for, but it wasn't at all obvious to early game designers, and in fact, this feature of Space Invaders came about as a result of the technical limitations of the hardware at the time. Space Invaders designer Tomohiro Nishikado discovered that the processors he was working with rendered the graphics for the alien invaders faster when there were fewer of them on screen, so they would start to speed up as more and more of them were destroyed. Rather than fix this so that the invaders stayed at a constant speed, Nishikado kept this feature in the game and, in the process, accidentally invented difficulty curves in video games. So now when the last invader gets you, you can take comfort in the fact that what you're seeing is an important piece of gaming history. Ah, f*** you speedy little... Nope, doesn't help, sorry.
Mario is one of the most recognisable characters in the world, but when you actually stop and think about his design for a second, almost nothing about him screams beloved video game protagonist. He's a squat little plumber with a weird moustache, wearing overalls and a hat that was out of style when he debuted in 1981, let alone now. But somehow, instead of running screaming, the world embraced this little weirdo, and as a result, we got decades of brilliant games, somehow starring a Brooklyn plumber. But while Mario's design might seem odd, he is the way he is thanks to both technical limitations of the hardware he originally appeared on and some masterful design on the part of the developers who created him. Everything about Mario is designed to make him recognisable and readable while using the barest minimum of pixels and processing power. Regular Mario is only 16 pixels tall, and that's not a lot of space in which to convey a unique character. So, Mario wears overalls because they make his primitive running animations easier to see. He has a moustache so that they didn't have to animate a mouth, and he has a hat because it reads better than hair when you've only got a few pixels to work with. And so, what could have been an amorphous blob with a rudimentary face ended up as a unique sprite full of personality that has endured for 40 years. And now, with the benefit of today's gaming hardware, he can wear whatever clothes he likes, not just overalls. Although maybe that's not a good thing.
The modern Metal Gear games are huge, sprawling epics with storylines that span decades of shadowy conflict and gameplay that lets you kidnap goats with a weather balloon. But the series' origins are much more humble, beginning with the original 1987 Metal Gear for the MSX2, a mostly forgotten home computer popular in Japan at the time. While it was popular, when it came to video games, the MSX2 had some pretty serious limitations in terms of the number of sprites it could have on screen at any one time without the graphics starting to flicker and the game crashing. What this meant for developer Hideo Kojima was A, no goat kidnappings, and B, that he could only have a few enemies on screen at any one time, and that shooting had to be kept to a minimum because showing the bullets fired on screen would also tax the MSX2's capabilities. So Metal Gear was retooled from a military shoot-'em-up, which is what Konami had originally intended, to be a stealth game where the whole point was to avoid enemy encounters and infiltrate the enemy base without being discovered. As such, in this case, technical limitations accidentally created an entire genre of video games. So every time you're crouched in a vent, waiting for a guard's cone of vision to swing in the opposite direction, you have the limited memory of the MSX2 to thank. Or blame, I guess. As a side note, another element of Metal Gear's compensatory design was that Kojima also placed a greater emphasis on story to keep players engaged, as they wouldn't be doing lots of exciting shooting. This proved to be popular and, as a side effect, planted the seed that would sprout years later in Metal Gear Solid 4's record-breaking 71-minute uninterrupted cutscene. So thanks for that, the MSX2.
You're not angry anymore.
Oh, I'm still mad. But now, you've got a chance to win me over.
Thank you so much for watching this video about the technical limitations that accidentally made great games. Now, you ought to do what the terrifying rabbit tells you and click on one of these two videos up here for another excellent video game video. And if you really enjoyed this, why not like and subscribe and hit that notification bell to be notified whenever we make a video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.